Characters. They help tell the action in a story. An author uses characterization to reveal personality traits about the characters in his or her story. Now, there are two types of characterization. And what's characterization again? Well, it's how the author reveals or shows you, the reader, traits about characters in a piece of literary work. Now, let's talk about the two types of characterization. There's direct characterization, and then there's indirect characterization. An easy way to remember direct characterization is the word direct, because in direct characterization, the author is literally directly stating who or what the character is. And also, here's another quick little tip. Typically in direct characterization, the author uses the character, aka Melinda, the verb, state of being verb, which are is, are, was, and were, and then supplies an adjective. So like this, Melinda is stylish. The author is directly telling you a personality or character trait about the character Melinda. Now, VIP number 1, the most common form of characterization used is indirect characterization. Indirect characterization is where the author shows things that reveal who or what the character is. Let's go back to Melinda. We already know Melinda is stylish. We learned that through direct characterization. But let's say as the author, I want you to figure out that Melinda is stylish. Therefore, I could say, Melinda always dresses nice. She always wears the most fashionable and high-end clothes. You could infer from that statement about how Melinda looks or how she dresses that she is stylish. So, direct, the author directly tells you. Indirect, you have to read and infer. Now, there are 5 methods of indirect characterization. 5 ways that the author shows you to help you better infer who or what the character is like. Now, there's an easy word to remember when thinking about these 5 methods of indirect characterization. And that word is steal. S-T-E-A-L. Steal stands for speech, thoughts, effect, actions, and looks. Let's look at speech first. Speech is how the author reveals to you something about the character by what the character says, or reveals to you something about the character by the way they speak. If there's a character in a novel and the narrator says the character speaks with a haughty attitude, with her nose stuck up in the air, you could infer based on the character's speech that she could be high class, royal, or stuck up. So speech is all about what the character says or how the character speaks. The T stands for thoughts. What's revealed by what the character's inner thoughts and feelings. You learn a lot about a character through the character's thoughts. This is probably one of the most common methods of indirect characterization, is the character's inner thoughts. What the character is thinking, what the character is feeling. The E stands for effects. What's revealed through the character's effect on other people? What's revealed through how other characters feel or behave to the character? I have a character named Mr. Bird. Every time Mr. Bird walks by, I see mothers drawing their children closer. What can I infer about Mr. Bird based on his effect on other people? I can infer that maybe he is a stranger, maybe he is sneaky, maybe he is mean. So, speech, thought, effect, S-T-E. Let's look at A. A stands for actions. This is the second most common method of indirect characterization that an author uses, because the character reveals through what they do and how they behave. So, action is all about the character's behavior, what they do, how they behave. And that's also why it's linked in with speech, because speech and action will always typically go together. Therefore, if I have a character, his name is Arnold. Every time Arnold walks up steps, Arnold trips. Every time I see Arnold, his shoelaces are untied. Every time I see Arnold in the cafeteria, Arnold spills his drink. These are all actions. What can I infer based on Arnold's actions? Arnold is a klutz. And lastly, the L stands for looks. What's revealed by what the character looks like and how the character dresses. So looks really focuses on physical traits and the outside external countenance or facial expressions of the character. So if a character named Mitzi has her nose frowned up and she's giving you an eye roll, those are all looks. And a little bit of action, you can infer something either smells or she has a bad attitude. Or if I have a character named Ditsy, and Ditsy always has her head down, her clothes are always wrinkled, you might infer that Mitzi has low self-confidence. 5 methods of indirect characterization: still, speech, thoughts, effect, actions, and looks. Check you later. So let's look at still in action. So we have 5 sentences here, and each sentence gives us an indirect way that the author is trying to show us about a character or characters in question. So let's see how speech looks in action. I hate myself that I still love you, but I do. I still love you. Are you happy? Sebastian yelled to Carrie. So clearly Sebastian is yelling this to Carrie. So what does this reveal about Sebastian through what he is saying or his speech? Clearly he says he hates himself, that he still loves you, but I do. So clearly Sebastian's real emotions are he doesn't really hate Carrie, he hates himself. So what can we infer from this? Sebastian is still in love with Carrie. Let's look and see how thoughts play a role. Don't sell the car, Dad, Walt thought. Don't you know what that really means for us? All right, so we have a character, Walt, who's talking to, looks like his dad. And he's thinking this: don't sell the car, Dad. Don't you know what it really means for us? So clearly the car means more than just a car, and Walt doesn't want Dad to sell the car. So what can we infer about Walt's relationship with his father? Well, one, we can infer that they're not very close, but Walt desires for them to be close, and he's thinking the car will make them closer. Thoughts. Let's look at effect. You look great, Kim, Charlie said excitedly when he saw how ill she really looked. So clearly, Charlie is affected by how Kim looks. So what can we infer about Charlie? One, Charlie cares, and he wants to cheer Kim up. Also, we can infer that Kim is really sick, and she's sicker than Charlie wants her to realize. Let's look at action. Remember, action is the second most common use of indirect characterization. Cat appeared suddenly with warm bread to feed his friends. All right, so Cat did something. He appeared suddenly with warm bread. Clearly, this bread was for his friends, and his friends really wanted the bread. So we can infer that Cat is a good friend. We can also infer that Cat is resourceful. And lastly, let's look at looks. Kenrick's face is flushed with fever. His skin is wan and pale. So what can we infer about Ken based on how he looks? His face is flushed with fever. His skin is wan and pale. Kenrick is either very sick to the point that he's about to die. And that's still in action.